to the play. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Number 49 on the defense. 15-yard penalty. Third down. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanlike conduct.
What's up, everyone? Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Another week of football is behind us. Man, I'm happy. It's been a good season so far. A lot of drama, a lot of unforeseen, unpredictable. Week 2, weird shit happens, man. Always. Every year, week 2, weird things happen. Just as an example, week 1, 11-5 in my picks. Week 2, 7-9. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. Today, I want to talk a little bit about, of course, week 2. Do a bit of a recap. Had some quarterback injuries, much like week 1. We're also going to have the Yeah But Hater segment. I think you guys will enjoy it this week. A couple of different options I could have gone there, but ultimately I think you'll like the angle that I went with. But let's start off with this. So 2 weeks behind us, right? Still 15 more games on everybody's schedule. 16 more weeks. So that's one thing that's unusual about this year. Every team now, of course, will play 17 games. So traditionally, team starts out 2-0 or 0-2. You've got 14 games left to figure out the rest of your season. And, I mean, it seems like so much, right? It seems like the NFL season just started. You can get off to an 0-2 start, figure it out, no big deal. Equally as, you could start out 2-0 and nothing is guaranteed. There's, always a case you might not even make the playoffs. But now, with 17 games and a 7th playoff team, that was new last year, but it changes things up a bit. It keeps that window open longer, and I think that it keeps those teams that started 0-2 alive a little bit longer. Or I should say potentially, because I don't know that any of the current 0-2 teams are really all that real. So let's start out and look at the 2-0 teams first. So we've got 7 teams left that are 2-0. Undefeated. I was going to say undefeated, but that just kind of sounds silly to say 7 teams are undefeated and they've all played 2 games each. So if you look at 2-0 starts in NFL history, it's a 62% chance just about that you'll make the playoffs if you start 2-0. So, hey, if there were 10 teams, that means 6 of them are going to make it, 4 of them probably not. So, with the 7 teams, that means about 4 or 5 teams, statistically. Again, this isn't a guarantee. And look, 17-game season might change things up. But if we're going off of the trends, that means 4 to 5 of these 7 teams are going to make the playoffs. So let's try to figure out who those teams are going to be. Now, if I'm looking back solely at my over-under picks, I know the easy answer will be the 3 NFC West teams and Tampa Bay. But they're not the 3 NFC West teams that I would have guessed would have been 2-0 at this point. You could look at the AFC West. First of all, the AFC is absolutely stacked. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to say that, these AFC teams that are 2-0 are a shoo-in. But let's start out with this. The most surprising, I think, for me is the Vegas Raiders. They beat the Ravens after being down 14. They were down field goal with, 30 seconds to go, no timeouts. Carr finds a way to get them down the field. They go to OT. They win what in week 1 was the game of the year so far, right? And then they pretty soundly beat Pittsburgh in week 2. Not a shocker. I mean, do we even know if Pittsburgh's going to be any good? I think they're probably more a 9-8 team than a 12-5 team. But nonetheless, look, Vegas has looked good. Their offense has looked good. Derek Carr has looked very sharp. And I know people out there, the pundits might roll their eyes and say, Derek Carr, hey, I've got some quarterback tier stuff coming in future episodes. So just hang tight for that. But, the pass rush has also been really nice for the Raiders. I keep wanting to say Oakland. It's not Oakland. Pass rush has been nice, which hasn't always been a thing. And, you know, again, 2 nice wins over tough, physical AFC North teams. So, look, Vegas, the Raiders are looking like the physical Raiders of old, right? Denver, Teddy Bridgewater's been nice. You know, he's always fine. You know, he's a stable journeyman. I like him more than like a Fitzpatrick type, but, you know, I don't think it's somebody that necessarily comes in and can maybe carry you to the playoffs. But so far, Denver has looked good. Now, on the flip side of this, I'll say I kind of saw this coming. Really easy open to the schedule. They're going to go 3-0 because they play the Jets. We'll get to that on Thursday morning's pod. But, you know, they come in, good pass rush. Defense looks really nice. Secondary, once again, with Simmons and Surtain all of a sudden look like, oh, shit, they've actually got some talent on the defensive side in the secondary. But let's be real. They beat the Jaguars and they beat the Giants, who are maybe the 2 of the worst 5 teams in the league. I don't know. I don't want to take away from Denver, but they typically will get out to this quick start because of scheduling breaks, elevation, you know, people aren't really in game shape, whatever. I don't want to dismiss what they've accomplished, but I had them more on the under side. You know, the Raiders I actually thought would go over, be about 8-9, 9-8. I still think that's the case for the Raiders, but I'll give them credit for being 2-0. Tampa. Okay, Tampa's 2-0. I don't think that's very much a surprise. Their over-under was 12. They're going to win at least 12 to 13 games. It's going to happen. The negative that you see in Tampa is they look very complacent still. They look like they know they're going to win. Like and that's a scary place to be in because if you get in that kind of a mindset come playoff time, that's how you can get smacked in your mouth and you don't see it coming. You get blindsided. The D has been surprisingly the biggest question mark. Now, I've said this before. I said it last year. You know, you can catch it on Twitter at therep.network. Shout out. Their defense takes a long time to get going. It seems like they'll fall behind quickly. The offense makes some mistakes. Defense gives up a couple of big plays. Tampa has to come out and, you know, play out of a big hole. That's at least how a lot of last year was. Playoffs were a different story. I mean, they fell behind in that Saints game, but for the most part, they had pretty good control on all the other games that they won, and especially with the defense making big plays. Nobody's going to forget the Super Bowl, holding the Chiefs to 0 touchdowns. But they've been questionable right now. The pass rush hasn't been able to get to the quarterback nearly as quickly as I would have thought, nearly as quickly as they had in years past, and especially not for all the talent that they have in the pass rush. That's the biggest question mark. The secondary, I think, has been, you know, maybe they're a little bit overrated. You know, I definitely like Davis and, you know, Winston or Whitehead. You've also got, you know, plenty of talent back there, Winfield. But I don't think that, you know, they're the risky types, right? They're more ball hawk types. If you got a good pass rush, these guys can thrive. I'm a little bit worried about their defense, but hey, on the other side of it, the offense is ridiculous. Tom Brady, 44 years young, 9 touchdowns already. You know, more on the Falcons later, but yeah, Tampa. I mean, they're definitely making the playoffs. They very much could win it all again. In fact, the only logical reason I said that they wouldn't is that just doesn't happen often. Last person to do it was Mr. Tom Brady. Next team, Carolina Panthers. Now, a lot of people are looking at this surprised. Oh, 2-0. And I even had them as an under for their over-under. I want to say it was 7. I don't have it in front of me. But Carolina, they are also going to get some scheduling breaks. I looked at this earlier and thought, okay, they actually will get out to a fast start. Don't be surprised if they end up 6-2. You know, and what does it tell you about the team? Well, Matt Rule, good coach from everything you hear. They're a decent team last year. They started out, 4-4 before losing a ton of games in a row. They compete, though. They've been in every game. They don't really get blown out. At least they haven't under Matt Rule. And at quarterback, you always had question marks. Well, still kind of have a question mark with Darnold under center, but he's cleaned up a lot of the mistakes that he used to make. They've been sound, and they've been a very well-rounded team. I thought that they would be right on the outside of making the playoffs, maybe, you know, squeezing out that 7 seed. It looks very possible now. I will say, I would go as far to say 4 to 5 teams, I might lean more on the 5-team side, and Carolina might be that other team. They might be right on that 9-8 range and make the playoffs. So one of my other playoff picks on the NFC, I'm already kind of abandoning, but more on them when we get to the 0-2 segment. By the way, first 2-0 start for Carolina since 2017. They've gone 2-0 7 times before, and in those 7 times, they've made the playoffs 6. So keep an eye on that. The Rams. Look, this was my Super Bowl pick. I hope, for the Brady's sake or for the Niners' sake that I'm wrong. But hey, they're my Super Bowl pick, and for good reason. Matt Stafford, lighting it up. The defense, tons of talent. Aaron Donald, best player in the league. Their defense, though, hasn't been perfect. They that Chicago game was actually a lot closer than the score indicated. They were able to move the ball. I even mentioned as much. Dalton, the 2020 quarterback, they were moving the ball up and down the field. They just weren't able to punch it in. And similar with Indianapolis, the Colts, who we'll get to them a little bit later. Injuries, a lot of COVID stuff, still trying to gel. I expected a slow start for them, but even with all the mistakes they made, they were right there. The Rams let them linger. They let them kind of stick around in the game. The run game is going to be a question, especially with Henderson now banged up. Michelle's going to get carries. That would be my biggest concern for the Rams. And then you like Woods and you like Kupp. But outside of that, losing Everett, they have less depth now at tight end. Deshaun Jackson, is he going to be able to be on the field more than 4 games in a year? But again, picking nits here at the Rams. Arizona, I thought Seattle would be in this spot, at the 2-0. I still think Seattle can win that division, even though I have a lot of worries about their defense after blowing what should have been a game soundly put away. But, man, Kyler Murray. So last year, Cardinals go 6-3, which includes that fluky Bills Hail Mary. Then they proceed to lose, a shit ton of games and miss the playoffs. They don't get over 9. And it's easy to say, okay, Kingsbury, the Cardinals. I think a lot of it had to do with Kyler Murray's injury, and it took this year to remind me. Oh yeah, he was banged up at the end of last year. This year, dude's ridiculous. Half the time he's just backpedaling, chucks it off the back foot, and it's a perfect spiral right into Christian Kirk's hands. How many times have we seen that this year alone? They add Rondale Jones. They've got a lot of depth. Offensively, defense, a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism, but they're just kind of gamblers. D gave up 33 to the Vikings, and really they were a chip shot field goal that the Vikings Joseph should have made but didn't make from going 1-1. But nonetheless, Kyler Murray here I think is the point, right? That's the conversation. So they're a little bit dangerous. That might be a playoff team. I think they're the 4th team in that division. I don't think 4 teams will make it to the playoffs from one division, but we'll see. The season is young, and if there's any reason I'm saying they won't win that division, they won't make the playoffs, it's just because of my preseason guesses. Thus far they look like a good team. Defense has some holes in it. And then the last, but definitely not least, 2-0 team, San Francisco 49ers. Haven't been really all that impressive. They were up 41-17 with 2 minutes to go against Detroit, and they have to sweat it out. They're backed up into their own red zone, about to give up potentially what could be the game-tying touchdown. So, they didn't look impressive, and Philly, Philly was up 3-0, and it looked like a blowout, 3-0. But, they found a way to win both games. Both games were on the road. They're dealing with a ton of injuries at running back. Mostert, Hasty, Mitchell, you name it, they're banged up. I'm half wondering if Garrison Hurst is available. At this point, just get somebody that can gain 3-4 yards. Call up Frank Gore. That'd be kind of cool. But anyway, another 2-0 team. I thought they would get out to a pretty good start. I thought the Niners would be a playoff team. I still feel that way. So, again, the 7 teams that are 2-0 right now, you got the Raiders, Broncos, Buccaneers, Panthers, 49ers, Cardinals, Rams. I think Tampa, San Francisco, and LA, definite playoff teams. I think Arizona and Carolina might be fighting for that 7 seed. And then I think between the Raiders and the Broncos, man, the AFC is just stacked. I could see one of them making it as that 7 seed, but I still think the Chargers are going to be that other team. We'll see. Now, looking at the 0-2 teams. So, look, I mentioned if you go 2-0, there's a 60% chance you make the playoffs. If you go 0-2, there's a 10 to 12% chance you're going to make the playoffs. Not a ton of teams do it. Obviously, that's 1 in 10 just about. Some notable teams from the past. One of the Cowboys teams during the Emmitt Smith-Aikman, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years era. One of them did it. You've got the Giants and the Eli era who did it. So, I mean, it's doable, but there aren't too many surprise 0-2 teams here. So we'll just go through the list. I see maybe one playoff team. So here we go. Detroit Lions. I'll give them credit. They've played with a lot more fight than I thought they would. They gave the Niners run for their money. They're up at halftime against Green Bay. I mean, Goff moves the ball all right, but it's like the Goff of old. He does a lot of good, but he also does a lot of bad. He still doesn't protect the ball as much as you'd like. Yeah, I mean, I will say, the NFC North seems kind of weak. I still think it's a runaway for the Packers. But no, the Lions, 0-2, I thought they would struggle to go over the 4.5 win mark. I still very much feel that way. Jacksonville, man, this is the worst team in the league. I'm sorry. I have no hope for this team. Urban Meyer, a lot of weird things going on there. He keeps getting connected to the USC job, and even though his family and him and, everybody around him is saying, no way in hell, we're here in Jacksonville, it's something to keep an eye on. I mean, he has a tendency to kind of flee, right? So that's going on. You hear about his temper, rubbing people the wrong way, chewing people out because of preseason games, and it's just not going as well as he would have wanted. They're a train wreck, and I mean, nobody thought this would be an overnight success. The thing that I'm very worried about, and I mean, as a Houstonian, full disclosure, maybe I'm not worried or concerned, but to see somebody like Lawrence end up in a really shitty situation like that, somebody that's a can't miss, man, we'll see. I hope that the organization itself doesn't screw him up. The Jets, no, they come into the season as maybe the most injury, snake-bitten team other than maybe Baltimore. Becton out for half the season with the injury last weekend. The O-line is banged up. They're already lacking talent to begin with. I mean, they've got no chance of turning this around. They're definitely an under for my pick. I see them maybe winning 4 to 5 games. Wilson's going to develop some bad habits, and I hope that they don't stick for his sake. But it's not a good team. There's not a ton of talent, and they've lost tons of player to injury already. Jets aren't turning this around, so don't put any money on them. Keeping it in New York, the Giants. First of all, what a brutal loss that was. Now, we're talking Thursday Night Football last week against Washington. Wow. So you've got Slayton dropping the gimme touchdown. You've got Daniel Jones, huge mega Steve Young run, getting called back by a flag. And then the worst is the questionable offsides to give the Redskins, to give Washington a second attempt at that game-winning field goal, which they needed because they missed the first one. Anyway, it's a weak division, and the Giants get the next team that I have on the 0-2 mark, the Falcons next. So, I mean, one of those teams is going to be 1-2. One of them is going to be the 0-3. The one thing the Giants have is that they're in kind of a weak division, although I think Dallas, with their offense, has kind of established themselves as the team to beat in the NFC East. So, I mean, the Giants aren't, you don't put a stick a fork in them, but, I mean, I don't see them turning it around. I think 7 wins would be a huge accomplishment for that team. And I mentioned they're playing the Falcons next. Oh man, what a mess. I don't even know what else to say. I'm kind of lost for words. They are completely flat against Philly, and they come out and play pretty well against Tampa. I thought they might actually cover, and if it weren't for 2 fluky, crazy Matt Ryan interceptions, 2 crazy pick sixes at the end, they were well on their way. I mean, they were right there, but divisional games can be like that. I mean, look, Detroit gave Green Bay a game for a half and then pretty much packed it in and went back home. Part of me with Atlanta, I wonder if they have any regrets for not going after Justin Fields. And that's not to say anything about Kyle Pitts. Pitts actually made a couple of big plays, and he looked like Julio out there, Julio Jones. He looked like a complete mismatch certain times. But the problem is he didn't get the ball thrown to him nearly enough because I don't know that Matt Ryan has it anymore. He's won about 25 of his last 60 games. He's not it anymore. So with Atlanta, I mean, I don't know that they're going to be picking in the top 5. They might be. I mean, they were this year, right? But I mean, I feel like they had their guy with Fields. They had an opportunity. They had plenty of different quarterbacks they could have taken right there at that 6th spot, and yet they let it go. So I mean, it's hard to say they're going to regret that, especially if they've got a future Hall of Famer. Like everybody already, penciled in Pitts into the Hall of Fame. But I mean, quarterback, most important position, they have a huge question mark there moving forward. So last 2 teams are Minnesota and Indianapolis. So the Vikings I had as my fringe 7 seed. I'm done with them. They just 2 brutal losses in a row. They did this last year too, where they get just some very painful losses. Somehow end up 500 after 10 games. I mean, look, that could still be the case. Again, NFC North is pretty weak, but man, that's brutal. There's just weird chemistry with this team. And I mean, granted, they're a few plays away. They go to overtime against Cincinnati, and they miss a 37-yard field goal to beat Arizona. A few plays away from going 2-0. But I mean, Cousins will throw 70%, and that's the only thing they'll point to is how accurate and how effective he is. And then you look, and he's got 200 yards passing. Or, they just 5 yards per average. I mean, Minnesota is just vanilla all the way. And I don't think they're a playoff team at this point anymore. But again, I could be wrong. I think it's more likely, though, that Carolina, or one of those teams, Arizona, that had that 2-game head start on them will kind of carry that through, especially Arizona now that they've got the tiebreaker. And then Indianapolis. So I saw this coming, from the Wentz injury, from, all the weird COVID shit going on. I thought they'd get out to a really, really slow start. They're in danger now of possibly going 0-3 when they play the Titans this week. The thing with Wentz, though, and I think that's the big story from this game, at least, or at least in Indianapolis, is what do you get from Wentz? And that's no surprise. I mean, that's kind of been the question for the last year and a half. I feel like any water cooler conversation revolving around Wentz is as 50-50 as can go. Some people think, still top-tier talent. He's a bust. He's developing bad habits. I don't know what to make of it now. He rolls up his ankle, gets hurt again. I still think, out of all the teams I mentioned, if any of them are going to make the playoffs, it's going to be the Colts. Just the defense, the coaching, the running game. They had 2 tough games. I mean, playing the NFC West, which is the best division in the league, playing them back-to-back to open the season. It's definitely not a walk in the park. So they get a tough physical Tennessee team who's feeling good after their big comeback on Sunday. I don't know. We'll see. I thought they might start 1-4 or so before they turn it around. But remember, there's 15 games to go, so plenty of room for the Colts to pick it right back up. All right, going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about some quick QB injuries before we get into the Yeah But Hater segment. Don't go anywhere.
Excuse me, I'm talking to you. Hey, JK. But what's up, everybody? It's your boy Jacquees from the Don't End Me podcast. Do me a favor, head over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button when you get the chance, okay? The cool thing is, when you subscribe, you'll be the first one to get all of our unfiltered takes on today's latest controversies, current events, society, and relationship talks from a guy's perspective right when it's published. How dope is that, right? So you can find our link on the show notes. Please help us grow. Spread the word about Don't At Me and the rest of our repertoire family of podcasts. All right, let's get back to it.
All right, QB injuries from week 2. They're actually more than I remember typically happening this early in the season. I mean, well, let's start out with this. Tua gets banged up, rib injury. He's day-to-day, but he's likely in doubt for playing in week 3 against the Raiders. You've got Andy Dalton, who knee injury, but avoids a major ACL. So, oddly enough, Nagy makes it a point to mention that he's their starter when healthy. Okay, cool. Yep, great, thanks. So, you've got Justin Fields coming out. Now, that'll be interesting. The reason why I say it's weird that Nagy mentions that is because let's say Fields come out, lights it up against the Browns, and all of a sudden he's the talk of the town. Next week, it's the lead of the podcast, and then week 4, Dalton's healthy. Are you going to, he's still our starter because that's what I said a week ago. Can't say that. Are you going to, now Fields played better, so I was wrong. Just don't say anything. Hey, this is what we've got. He's banged up. He's not our quarterback this week. He's on the bench. Whatever. Move on. Just weird shit happening in Chicago. But curious to see what happens there. I hope Fields lights it up. I'm excited to watch him play. Wentz, I mentioned he rolled his ankle. He's going to probably miss week 3, especially against a tough Tennessee team. I mean, that's a tough team to go up against, especially with I was going to say one ankle, but Frank Reich said he banged up both ankles. Wentz likely out week 3. Tyrod Taylor, man, I'm going to save a little bit of this because I got some of this for the Yeah But segment. He gets hurt. I don't know where the hammy injury comes from. Hammy injury, he's pretty much out week 3, so Davis Mills is coming in. And, the Texans are definitely just packing it in, tanking it at this point. And then, Taylor Heineke is playing again week 3 because Fitzmagic got hurt week 1. He'll be out about half the season. So you got a lot of rookies, a lot of young guys. So for Miami, you'll likely have Jacoby Brissett. For Indianapolis, you'll likely have Jacob Eason. For the Houston Texans, you'll likely have Davis Mills. Ouch. And in Chicago, you're going to have Justin Fields this week. Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr both got banged up. Looks like it was going to be a serious injury for both of them, and fortunately, neither one of them got hurt. So they come out unscathed. We got those guys out for this week. But transition to the Yeah But segment, right? Let's park there on the last guy that I mentioned, Baker Mayfield. So I gave some thought to this, right? I gave some thought to this, and I thought, maybe I'll go Ravens here, because the Chiefs blew it. Lamar, those really crappy picks. They're 1-1, but they should be 0-2 if all this shit didn't happen. But I also think about all the gimmies they gave to KC. You can't but if, they basically put their own foot in their mouth. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that they were the benefactors of good luck. If anything, they put themselves in a hole and got out of it. It's a 14-point swing when you look at the Lamar interceptions. One is a pick 6 back to the house, and the other one, he throws it, going into their own red zone. So 10 to 14-point swing. Bad pick 6, but anyway, I'm leaving the Ravens alone. Maybe I'll go after Lamar in another week. I've got this blind loyalty to them now because they were my Super Bowl pick, and I got to stick with it. I'm courageous. My Yeah But segment. All right, so let's think about this scenario. Let's say it's the first time you're playing. Let's say it's a girl you're dating. You just started dating. Y'all playing some basketball, or even a little brother, right? So it's at first you're playing and you're just dusting them. Let's say you're playing one-on-one with your little brother. You're dusting them. You're scoring on them. Working the post moves, dribbling them down, crossing them up, dribbling around their head, all this kind of shit, whatever. Scoring, boom, you're just lighting it up. Then you kind of realize where you're at, right? You get some situational awareness, and you think, oh, shit, man, I can't just dust my little brother here, kill his confidence. I've got to, you know what? I've got to let him get a couple points. Let me pull some punches. Let me pull back. Let him get a couple of buckets in. Now that's early era, when you can actually still beat them. That's not before their skills supplant yours. But anyway, that's kind of what I feel when I think about this Texans game. Now, I'm not, again, for those first-time listeners to the Yeah But Hater segment, it's mostly tongue-in-cheek. But, I'm not really saying that they called it in and said, hey, man, let's take our feet off the gas pedal. But let me just say this. Tyrod Taylor goes in, scores. They're up 14-7. Then all of a sudden he just kind of milks this hammy injury. You got Andre Roberts letting the punt bounce off his face. Man, I don't know. You ask me, Texans look pretty damn good in week 1. They played a shitty Jags team, but they look pretty good. They're in week 2. They got a lead on a playoff team. And my yeah but hater thing is going to go to Cleveland, because think about all that they needed to have happen to win that game. They're 12.5-point favorites. In fact, I think it closed at 13.5 before game time. And they win by 10, right? So Texans cover. Browns, once again, blow a cover. 6-10 against the spread last year. So I'm thinking that, Tyrod's going in for the score. And, Coach Cully over there calls him in on the headset. Mr. Casario calls up Mr. Cully and says, hey, man, we're winning a little bit too much. Tyrod over here lighting him up, getting touchdowns. Who the hell does he think he is? Matter of fact, Justin Reed on the defense, he's turning the ball over, picking the ball off, forcing fumbles. We can't have that shit, man. We're tanking, man. We need one of the top picks. You know what? Have Tyrod kind of like gimp into the end zone on this one. So it pulls up. Shit. Trots off the field. Hey, they're looking at you, Tyrod. Shit. Milks the hamstring injury again. I'm just saying, man, the Browns needed the Texans to call in the tank to win that game. Now, you could say all you want about 2 incompletions total for Baker Mayfield, and, the run game was putting the ball down soundly, but, hey, it required Davis Mills to come in, throw a pick, start playing vanilla, punting on 4th and short. I mean, look, Cleveland, I had them in the Super Bowl top 8. They might still be in there. We'll see how I feel Wednesday night, coming into Thursday morning before the next podcast episode comes out. But I'm just saying, man, you have a playoff team that needed the quote-unquote worst team in the league, who they'd be so lucky to win a game. They needed them to call in the tank experts to win at home as a 13.5-point favorite. So my yeah but hater segment this week, man, all the hate is going to Cleveland, because it's like, you really needed all those things, the shitty team, to do all these things for y'all to win. We'll see. But that said, they're probably still in my Super Bubble top 8. But anyway, week 3 is coming up. Thursday Night Football, Houston Texans hosting the Carolina Panthers. That should be a good one. Of course, Thursday morning, you'll be able to catch the next episode of Unsportsmanlike Conduct. I'm going to give you some of my picks, recap my picks from this week, because they weren't great. And then also just kind of give you some storylines, things to look out for in week 3. So make sure you're following on all social media at therep.network. Add us. Hey, we always get back to you. Want to start the conversation about sports. Make sure you subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Tune in Thursday, and thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, that was a good one.